Kenneth Clarke, the Shadow Secretary of State for Business Enterprise and Regulatory Reform, returned to his roots in Birmingham this month, where he used to practice as a barrister. Mr Clarke was the guest of the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce and spoke to our business reporter, Tom Scotney.
Obviously, there was the piece from you in the Post the other day regarding the Rover inquiry going to the SFO. We had Pat McFadden come back saying that this was the only option that the government had really, in terms of, they didn't really have an option not to send it to the SFO. I mean, are you satisfied now that they do?
I'm very sceptical. I'm not sure I'm very satisfied by that. If there was any question of fraud, it should have been referred years ago. The inspectors carrying out the inquiry could have referred it to the SFO at any time once they thought they were uncovering fraud. I therefore expressed disbelief when after 4 years this inquiry report is ready and suddenly it's decided to ask the SFO to look at it. Now I think our complaints may have succeeded. The Serious Fraud Office has had a big revamp recently and it's a much more dynamic office than it used to be. My suspicion, with no evidence I admit, is that the SFO objected to being used as an excuse for publication. So they let it be known that they might have a preliminary look in 3 weeks and send it back if they can't find anything to do. Lord Mandelson told the Select Committee yesterday that they might get it back in 3 weeks. Then we can see what's going to happen to the trust fund money for the former workers. Then we can see what description it gives of the government's role in this debacle when MG Rover collapsed. So, but of course, if the SFO decide they are going to have a proper look at it, then the government will achieve its aim and it won't come out till after the election. I never was quite clear why the government had chosen this consortium to buy MG Rover from BMW when it happened. I thought that the then Secretary of State's decision to lend the company £6.5 million of taxpayers' money to keep it alive through a general election was disgraceful. Disgraceful waste of public money. And the National Audit Office have already confirmed that. The reason, of course, I raised the further delay was not to try to I didn't think that the press like yourself will get wildly excited about 4 or 5 year old controversies where the government had already been criticised. But I was aware that lots of the ex-workers might get compensation from this trust fund if only we could get this blasted inquiry published.
If a Conservative government's going to be cutting funding going towards regional development agencies, do you think they'll be able to keep up the level of regeneration that's been going on in this region?
Whichever government wins the election is going to have to cut public spending. And you have to approach all policy on that basis. A lot of the support to business and local development that's delivered by the RDAs is extremely important to this region and others. What we're considering is whether the present setup is the most cost-effective way of delivering the support that government's got to give. Some things the RDA does we're certainly going to get rid of, like we're going to take them out of all planning and housing issues. But the support for business and the regeneration of depressed areas is an important task for government. And what we're actually looking at is there will be less money available probably for it, but it means you've got to get better value for money and decide what is the least wasteful, most effective way of getting the support you can afford through the projects worth backing.
So, with everything that's been happening recently, are you still fully behind Andy Coulson in his role at the Conservative Party?
Yeah, Andy's always convinced me that he knew nothing of what was going on before. More importantly, he's obviously always satisfied David Cameron that he was not involved. That's the key question. And Andy's name has obviously been brought into the story because it gives it an extra twist to the allegations about phone tapping. If those allegations are true, it's scandalous and the police should investigate it. But I have no reason to believe that Andy knew of this or was involved in this, and until somebody showed something to the contrary, I think people should accept his assurances.